no!
Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level. And today's episode's brought to you by PartySlate, the first website designed specifically for event professionals and venues. And on The Next Level, I have a guest co-host, and together we talk about the interview of the week and suss out a few key topics and help translate them into some specific strategies and ideas for you to use to bring your own business to the next level. And before I introduce today's wonderful guest co-host, I want to mention last week's interview, if you happen to miss it, was part 1 with Jose Villa and had Rachel Berthistle of the Lake Como Wedding Planner as my guest co-host. We had a great talk about Jose's interview and very excited about it because in 2 weeks, I'm going to release part 2 with Jose Villa, which is really super dynamic. So today's guest co-host, without any further ado, is none other than Robert Sherman, president of Washington Talent and my business partner with Kushner Entertainment. And I had Robert on the show a few months ago, and we talked about our partnership. I thought that Robert would be great on today's show, talking about the guests of the week. And so, Robert, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it's great. Love having you on the show. And the people that we're talking about, it is people versus a person. It is Jeannette Tavares and Jodi Moraru of Evoke, which is an event planning and production company out of Washington, D.C., working worldwide. Jeanette is the chief creative director and Jodi is a producer. However, it wasn't always like that. For those of you who listened to the full episode, and if you haven't, I recommend that you do. It's a great story. Jodi actually founded the company, hired Jeanette, who eventually became a producer, and later Jeanette bought out the company, and so their roles have been reversed, and now they're both individually more successful, and the company is also even more successful, and their partnership is a real interesting one, because even though Jeanette ended up buying out Jodi and Evoke, they are obviously still working together and have an amazing relationship, which is obvious. I mean, Robert, I thought it was just so obvious in their conversation how well they get along and the synergy that they've got together.
All they could show throughout the whole interview with you is the respect and admiration for each other. I mean, you could just feel it listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Respect and admiration.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
It really does. And, you know, it was interesting in terms of some of what really grabbed my attention in the interview, looking back on it now, is that Jodi had gotten to the point after doing this for a long time with Evoke where she was starting to think about an exit strategy. I think she mentioned she was at some conference where Seth Godin was speaking and he was asking everyone there, are you all thinking about an exit strategy? Which I thought, Robert, was a great idea. I mean, you know, I think if you start to think about that early enough, it could affect how you're doing your business, even if it's not for 15 years or for 5 years. And so I thought that the fact that Jodi talked about that was really cool.
And think about how fortunate she was, because the hardest part, besides the fact that you're technically giving up your business or your ownership of your business, you want to find the right person. You want I think Jodi said it, she wants the legacy to continue.
That's right. She did.
And it's very interesting. She was very fortunate. They're both very fortunate, but very fortunate to find Jeanette. Jeanette, or if you listen to the podcast, she talks about, she took mental ownership way before she ever took
That's a really good
a legal
point.
ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, this business was hers regardless of whose name was on the paper. And I think that says a lot for Jeanette. And also it made Jodi's decision, I think, a lot easier and a lot more comfortable when you have somebody like that.
I think so. No, that's a really good point. And I loved how the process went, how this eventually led to the deal that they made together, was that Jodi had a way with her, or had a way with her employees, checking in on them every few months and asking them, how are they feeling? And that's what led to Jeanette saying to her, well, basically, I'd love to own my business one day. And you had a point, Robert, before we hit the record button about that.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Jeanette, you had mentioned, weren't you afraid of, saying you want to own your own business someday to your current boss?
Wasn't that scary?
And Jeanette said, no, I wasn't afraid. I had no intention. I've always loved Evoke. I will always be Evoke. I was thinking about owning my own business in PR or marketing for other event industry professionals, but never going against Evoke. And I think, again, that just speaks worlds for what the relationship the two of them have. And obviously with Jodi and her way she cultivated it, with the asking her employees how they feel and cultivating a honest and open conversation.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I do that, but sometimes I forget and I let too much time go by. Even though, we've got this entertainment company, I think to basically take people's temperatures. I mean, like Jodi was saying, every few months, I think that's really critical to sit down one-on-one with each person and literally ask, how are you feeling, right? To get ahead. Because I think Jodi said something about she didn't want to get to the point where anything was negative, right? And catch it really quick and early. And so that's what led to them having that conversation. And then at that point, Jodi started to assign Jeanette bigger events, which is, that's what Jeanette wanted. And the fact that they had that conversation led to that. And I think it was, Robert, I think it was a year and a half later, they said that Jodi asked Jeanette a little more specifically, where do you want to be in 2 years? And Jeanette said, I want to take more of a managerial role, right? And then, we could talk about our partnership in a moment because this, I really resonated. Jodi was talking about how after 20 years, she was really tired of the operations, right? And it was really draining her of her sense of passion for producing events, and knew that Jeanette loved it and could take it to another level. And I'm thinking with you and I, it was a similar situation where I'd been doing this a long time with Kushner Entertainment. And I was just getting, I think, look, we all go through periods where we start to lose some of the passion, get a little burnt out, right? And for me, a lot of that was about running the operations. And you're brilliant at that. You've got a great infrastructure. And so I feel like I've been able to fly ever since you've taken it over.
Well, Jodi in the podcast mentioned that she looks at things from a 30,000 foot view, which is kind of like you, Andy. You're the same way.
Right. And Jeanette's more the details,
and that's
right?
me. So,
right.
There's so many things. If you listen to that podcast, there's so many things that makes it perfect for them. The synergy.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, got to be hard to go from boss to employee. But if you listen to Evoke, and I say Evoke, they refer to themselves as a team.
Yeah.
I don't think they use the word employee, and if they did, it was
no. I think you're right.
They use the word team, and that resonates. That's how they run their company. They're a team. So the whole boss employee thing doesn't even matter. They're partners at whatever level that is. They're partners, and their synergy it's infectious. It's amazing.
Well, and you can tell how excited both of them are. Right. For Jeanette, it was her dream to own a company. She really, I love, you all got to listen to the episode in detail if you haven't, because Jeanette talks about coming on as an intern, and how Jodi was her mentor. And so this was not overnight. This was a long process. And so Jeanette was able to really further develop her skills, her passion. And I remember, I believe during the interview, they said that once they started to talk about this, that Jodi then spent a year of having Jeanette really learn. Like Jodi opened the books up to her. Remember that part of the conversation?
Yeah, they referred to it, I think Jeanette referred to it as an educational journey.
That's a great phrase.
And that really is.
Yeah.
And that's really what has to happen to make this move successful.
Yeah.
You have to have a journey. It can't be something that happens quickly and without thought. And I thought that was a great phrase, educational journey.
And, again, we can resonate because she said it was like a year. Now, it's a little different with us. I opened the books to later, but we basically, we laugh about this, right? We dated practically for a year. We met week after week for a year. Then we started to negotiate, if I recall.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. And their situation was slightly different, but the same concept.
Yeah.
I had to learn about you. You had to learn about me. That's
right.
why we were. That's why we dated for the year
and get trust.
Exactly.
Right? Have the trust for each other.
Trust is number one. That's number one,
yeah.
and that resonates throughout their whole podcast.
It does.
The trust between the two of them, and the mutual respect. That's the biggest thing I got out of that.
Yeah. Many of our past guests, including Brian Raffanelli, Cece Johnson, Colin Cowie, and Lynn Easton, all use PartySlate to showcase their event work and build their businesses. And if you're not familiar with PartySlate, it's a website that inspires people planning events and connects them with the leading event professionals and venues across the country and the world. This is a really, really great website. You can sign up for a free profile where you can upload unlimited photos and events, or you can explore one of their membership options for even more exposure. And PartySlate has launched in 11 cities so far, including Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, and Miami. And they are coming to a city near you soon. Visit PartySlate.com to learn more. Again, you really got to check out PartySlate.com. While they were going through that process, I recall that they said, I don't remember which one of them, but talked about how they were discussing as they had their meetings, also not only opening the books, but what was working, what was not working, where did they want to be in the business, and like all of that.
Which sometimes I think when you're by yourself, that gets lost.
Oh, well, you get that perspective. Well, you don't have as good perspective.
Right. And I think that's what partners, however you want to define them, I think that's where partners really come in. Those are really important business questions and ideas and comments that need to be talked about. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're by yourself and you run your company by yourself like that,
that's right.
You lose track of that, and you lose a big advantage with that.
Well, and speaking for myself, before we technically partnered, although I had people working for me, I didn't have a partner. I mean, there wasn't that kind of a relationship. And although we would talk about stuff in the business, it's interesting with you, Robert. Since we have partnered, I feel like it's opening up a whole new. It's we're similar and we're different, and I feel really met by you. And so to be able to have these conversations about the details of our business, and again, same thing as Jodi and Jeanette were talking about. What is it that's working? What can we do better? What needs to be improved upon? Where do we want to go? I mean, I'm so excited by these conversations.
That's a recipe for success.
Yeah.
Those just to have those conversations and have the trust to do it. And I think, again, it goes back to their culture. I've had the privilege of being a creative partner with Evoke over the years. And in the podcast, they discussed how they feel about treating their creative partners and treating their other team members. And there's the old school approach of, aggressive and yelling or whatever that is. And then there's the more kind or general approach, and people don't, always have to be, nasty to get your point across. So you don't have to be aggressive. And I can tell you that's how Evoke works. I mean, I'm a creative partner for them, and I had the privilege just last weekend. I actually worked with them, and they treat everybody with that, as Jodi described it, Jeanette, Jodi, they treat everybody that way. That's how we're handling, and it makes everybody want to make the customer. We want to go the extra mile for it. Everybody does.
You're right. They were talking about how Jodi had a very nurturing style as a manager, and I know Jeanette has the same thing between the two of them, but it started way back with that kind of with not only within the company, but then, as you say, also with the vendors. And again, really want to change that word and call vendors creative partners. Colin Cowie was the one to start that, put that out there. Let's call vendors creative partners instead. And so how they treat the creative partners, you're right, absolutely. To really feel like you want to do your best, you've got to have, because it's a team, right? Every event's a team. The team leader is the planner. Right, that's the team. The planner has to set the tone.
They're the quarterback.
The example. They are, and not just for their own team, but for all of us as a team. And there's a person I dealt with, a planner. I'm not going to say the name, obviously, who had a really rough style with everyone and anyone. I mean, it had more of a yelling kind of a style. And I remember one time being in the green room with the various people. I'm thinking of the floral designer, the photographer, the video, myself with music, and everyone was just talking about how they can't wait to get through the job. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, everyone, we still are here for the client, but that's how rough it was dealing with this particular planner. So when I know Jodi and Jeanette are very nurturing and how they treat, the team really well. And I was like, yes, absolutely.
They not only do it before the event, they do it at the event. Yeah. And then I got to share with you, because this has never happened like this before. So after the event was over, this was the one I did last weekend with Evoke. The event was totally successful. The client was thrilled.
Okay.
Evoke spent the time. They wrote an email, and in the email, every single creative partner that was part of this thing a paragraph was written about.
A paragraph.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just thanking so and so and so and so.
It wasn't just that. Yeah, it was actually a paragraph.
Wow.
And I can only tell you, as a creative partner, it meant the world to me. Yeah. It was that somebody somebody spent the time to actually write that and think about that.
Right.
Because it was a great event. It was a great success.
Yeah.
And it was nice that they wanted to share that with us.
Yeah, they went really all out.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if I know you perform with other event planners and other people. Have you ever had someone do that before? Have you ever had a company do that?
I have seen it, but it's rare. So it's really interesting. It is rare, and and a lot of people don't necessarily write anything afterward. Now they'll say something that night, and I know it went well, but to actually take that time and write, it is nice to wake up on Monday or even Sunday sometimes if I'm checking my email and to see something. And you're right, in terms of writing a paragraph about each person, it really feels good. And I only want to work with that person again.
Absolutely. And everybody's busy. To take the time to do that, it's just it's very symbolic of how I think the Evoke team works.
Yeah. And again, before we go, generically speaking, this is all about a partnership between the two of them as well, and how it manifests throughout the whole process in their business. And so I thought that this was a really good idea to have you on, Robert, because of our process as partners. I knew that
very similar.
We both would really resonate with how Jeanette and Jodi did it.
Yeah, listening to their podcast made me think a lot about us.
Yeah.
It was although it had its differences, it was very similar. A lot.
Yeah.
And their dynamic is very similar to yours and mine.
That's right. No, it is. I know, and they're having a great time.
So are we. So there you go.
Well, look, that's all we do have time for today. Want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check out the site of Evoke, and that's evokedc.com. Again, evokedc.com. Their social media handles for Instagram is evoke_DC. For Facebook, it's Evoke DC. And just go to the show notes at theweddingbiz.com. You'll get all of this. Also, Robert, the company that you own on your own, WashingtonTalent.com. Be sure to check out WashingtonTalent.com. And the company that Robert and I are partnered on, Kushner Entertainment.com, of course. And also want to mention next week's episode. It's going to be with Sonal Shah, event planner based in New York City who specializes in over-the-top Indian weddings. I mean, we're talking over-the-top Indian weddings. It was an incredibly dynamic conversation. So be sure to tune in next week. And one last time, we want to thank our sponsor for today, PartySlate. Check out PartySlate at PartySlate.com. And we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.